So welcome back to Trade Talks. As usual, my co-host, Randy Beall, who is the business manager for the Atlanta North Georgia Building Trades. And today we have the honor of having Commissioner Tim Echols from the Georgia Public Service Commission.
It's a mouthful.
Thank you for joining us. I know you're a huge football fan, and I know that we'll get to talk about the future of energy in Georgia, but I know you're a big dog, and I know you're a big fantasy football guy. And you got a big weekend coming up.
Yeah, it's both. You know, this is traditionally the big fantasy football draft weekend. I'm in 4 leagues. My favorite is the one my son got me involved in 10 years ago. We're doing a live draft, so with a board and everything, not even using the computer. So that'll be cool. And then, of course, the beginning of college football season, and then NFL right behind it, right? So very exciting time in the life of all football fans.
Yeah, and we were just talking earlier about Georgia Construction Careers being the title sponsor for high school football in the state of Georgia. So I feel you. It's a big time of year. It's kind of like the best time of year in the South, really.
Yeah, you know, I was in Pee Wee football back when, you know, you had a weight class, right? So everybody weighed 85 pounds, and I was good. But when I got out of that, and I stayed short, and everybody else got big, it was difficult. That's when I moved over to track.
Yeah. Well, I got to give you a disclaimer. So I did fantasy football, right? And I tried to hang in there during the draft process, but it just took forever. People seemed like they really were trying to build an NFL team, right? And so I gave up and went to auto draft.
Oh, no.
By the way, I finished last in the league.
Yeah.
So that was my extent. But however, if you want to talk NASCAR, I have won several NASCAR fantasy leagues. So
I'm a huge college football fan. I'll tell you where I went to school if you don't throw something at me. I went to Auburn.
Oh, my goodness.
That ends the show, ladies and gentlemen.
I worked for the Georgia Bulldog Radio and Television Network for 9 years.
Did they
Last
know
year
this?
at Denton.
Did they know that you went to Auburn when you did
I
that?
wore my red and black like crazy.
Oh, okay.
You know, that's what was putting food on my table, and I wore my G and the whole deal. But I was there last year of Don and first 8 years, I guess, of Rick before Kirby got there. And, you know, I have never played I'm a huge college football fan. Watch it every weekend. Watch not only my team, but your team and every other team. And I've never played fantasy football. And I know that it's one of those things that, I would love, and it kind of scares me a little bit because I would get into it big time because I follow all the recruiting and all that stuff, you know.
Yeah, it's an NFL marketing thing, right? I mean, you become a fan of certain players who are on your team. So it changes you from a team mentality to an individual player mentality, and you start following, okay, so maybe you got Russell Wilson as your quarterback from Seattle, right? And so you become this huge Russell Wilson fan, even buying his gear and different things. I mean, it transforms the way you watch football.
Yeah. Do you have a predilection to drafting Georgia Bulldogs or no?
Not necessarily. I mean, I don't draft New York Jets as a general rule. And in fact, for our league, I buy a gift card to give to the first idiot that drafts a Jet. And so he gets a $10 gift card if he is so stupid to draft a Jet. But no, you want people that score, right? You want a Chief, right? You want a Viking. You want maybe this year with Matthew Stafford going to L.A., maybe you want L.A. So, you know, it's all about big offense.
Yeah. Well, I know that's a deep rabbit hole that I would probably get. I probably wouldn't do very well, you know, just because so many people are into it and everything. That's cool. So I wanted to talk a little bit about sort of the future of energy in Georgia. And for people who don't know, I just want to ask you, what does a commissioner of the Georgia Public Service Commission do, and what does that mean to the citizens of the state?
Yeah, it was created back in 1879 as the Railroad Commission to basically regulate people who had a territorial monopoly. So, you know, in general, if you have a monopoly, there's a chance for you to misbehave and take advantage of people because people don't have a choice. Mm-hmm. And so the legislature created this. It morphed into the Public Service Commission as we had telegraph lines and electrical lines and gas pipes. And so basically anything that's on the right-of-way, we probably have something to do with it.
So whenever the topic of energy comes up in the state of Georgia, the topic of Plant Vogtle generally comes up.
Yeah.
And we as the building trades have lots of people working there. Can you talk about that project? And every time it's a hot button topic, right? So people think it's taking too long. Why does that project dominate the headlines like it does, and why does it take so long to build?
Yeah, well, it's a big project, right? This is a project that's going to have a 100-year life. It's going to serve 5 generations with clean energy. And when I mean clean, I mean zero CO2 coming out of those cooling towers. People see that, Randy, and they think, oh, that's the nuclear reactor. No, that's just the cooling tower with the steam. People don't understand nuclear energy, and it is so important for the clean energy goals that the United States has. And I mean, we haven't built these in 30 years, and so we hadn't had the practice like we have with highways or bridges or cell phone towers or anything else, skyscrapers even. And so we are creating something more complicated than a spaceship. And it takes a while to get that done, but it is going to be worth it.
And it has to be done right. You know, let's don't forget that. So it takes a lot of training. I was just on a phone call with someone. We were talking about the needs of advanced nuclear energy moving forward, and they asked about the workforce and what did I see coming down the line that would make that complicated. And it's welding. We haven't had to date in any trade, Commissioner Echols, any trade that, ironwork, electrical, sheet metal, pipe fitting, that a welder comes out of the Technical College System of Georgia and can pass the welding test to get to Vogtle. Not one person has done that. Every one of them has to go through rigorous training by the trades to be able to pass that test. Not that we didn't want them to pass. We needed to put people on a job, but they couldn't do it. People don't understand the safety measures and the work that's involved. Is that not true? The quality of the work, and it's a standard. It's a high standard.
Yeah, it is so difficult to do nuclear standard welding or anything else. It comes under enormous scrutiny from the Nuclear Regulatory Commission. So you can't just take a person that's been out there welding in a little welding shop somewhere, maybe, or working on their race car over the weekend and expect them to do this. And so we have to have craftsmen who are highly trained. And for craftsmen to stay in that work, they've got to have good pay. It's got to support their family. They've got to have insurance. They've got to have those other things. And that's where your union comes in. You provide them with what they need to be able to keep them in that job and be able to do that job in a way that lets them live the kind of life they want to live.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And so how long is that project gonna last in terms of the construction phase of it, and what does that mean after it's complete?
Yeah, so the project began way back in 2009 when the Public Service Commission approved it, right? So we work hand in hand with Georgia Power. We essentially hold the purse, the ratepayer's purse. We have the keys to that purse and allow Georgia Power to access that. We're auditing what they're spending out of that purse. And so we have this fiduciary responsibility. So the plant, I was just there just recently this week, the plant has already passed Unit 3 hot functional testing, full temperature, full pressure, and they're wrapping up details. It has to run, Rut, for a while, just in kind of a practice session before we actually put it on the grid and charge the ratepayers the final amount for it. So this is going to happen. And those workers that are on Unit 3 move over to Unit 4. And what we've got to make sure, I think, going forward is that we don't lose this institutional knowledge that these craftsmen have gained now over the last 11, 12 years, let's get another project going that these craftsmen can take essentially the master's degree that they have in welding and electrical and sheet metal and all the unions that are involved. Let's get them on another project as soon as possible.
Well, that begs a question. So what happens to the other parts of the state? The Plant Bowens of the world is the one that I can think of. What is that? How does Georgia shift its energy, output and still keep the employment? Because you have to have people who have money to be ratepayers, right? So how does that look like when it's done in terms of the other plants and the other energy outfits in the state?
Yeah, most people, I think, recognize that coal has seen its glory days in America, and it will be slowly phased out. Some states have essentially gone to war against it and declared it immoral. We haven't done that in Georgia. We want to get our money's worth out of both Plant Shearer down in Juliet near Macon and Plant Bowen in Cartersville. So let's run those plants until the end of their useful life. I don't want to prematurely close these plants. And what would be ideal? What would be ideal is that the IBEW guys that we have there and other union workers, that we're able to have a smooth transition from the end of a coal plant's life over to another project. To me, that's ideal. That's going to take some planning, some good planning, but I think we need to be talking about that on a regular basis.
Yeah. So what is that? What could that look like? I mean, you hear a lot of buzzwords out there about solar and wind and those things. What does that look like in your estimation?
Yeah, I mean, right now at Idaho National Lab, we have a number of Generation 4 reactors being built, pilot programs being developed. NuScale, for example, is a reactor design approved by the Nuclear Regulatory Commission and the Department of Energy, getting a federal subsidy, and it is being designed, tested, and built there.
Generation 4 being?
Yeah, so it's the next generation, the advanced nuclear, which uses less water, safer, less of a emergency zone around the plant. Everything about it is safer, not easier, and that's why we still need the craftsmen that are in your unions to be able to be involved with building it. We have to have workers that know what they're doing.
Go ahead. Sorry.
Well, I was on another thing that was brought up in that call is about what you just said. How do we continue to have the workforce to do this? And listen, we respect and we honor the people that went to college and get degrees in engineering to develop a Plant Vogtle, but they don't have practicality. One thing that I can say is, being a tradesperson myself, and I've been a project manager, but I've been an installer, let's call it that, is we see things and learn things that the person in the office pushing the pen and the paper don't see. And it's essential for our folks, and they do a great job of this, to tell the people in their management chain of command, hey, I know it's drawn this way, I see this, but this is the best, most effective, safest way to accomplish it. And that's the kind of knowledge we can't afford to lose, because, this one took X amount of years, but that isn't the whole story. It didn't just take this long. It was actually started and then had to be stopped. I mean, there's a whole other story there, and then union labor came in and made sure this thing got done. But, we can get that timeline down, right? And Commissioner Echols, we can get it down some.
Yeah, I think we can, and certainly practice makes perfect. But let me get on my soapbox for a minute, because what you brought up, Randy, about the suits in the office thinking they know more than the craft on the ground. I mean, I think America, and I don't know who's responsible for feeding this myth, but I think we've done a great disservice to young people in telling them they have to have some college education to be successful. We have created this division, right, between blue-collar workers, craftsmen, and people that have some drama, art, history degree from some Ivy League school. And the truth of the matter is that we need all of these people living in harmony together. And you go to a country like Germany, and I can tell you, you still see tremendous respect for those workers in those plants. I mean, it's one of the reasons that they make great automobiles. They have maintained the societal respect for those craftsmen. And Randy, I fear that we've lost this in this country. We've got to get it back.
Well,
Absolutely.
It's an interesting point because in another area that's less divided, so to speak, less of a hierarchy, I think. The South is very much like that. But my son is a welder. He moved out west. And the Western ethic out there is not quite as, I'm talking about the Rocky Mountains region, really. if you when it's 25 degrees below zero, your art degree doesn't do you any good. And so I think that, that ethos, for lack of a better term, of that respect for tradespeople is a little bit more prevalent out there. And I think Randy does a great job of trying to, get that message out here in the Southeast as well, because there is kind of a divide here. It's, where'd you go to school? That's the first thing people ask you. And they don't really ask you that there. They don't really ask you that in Germany. There's an aptitude, kind of almost like a meritocracy thing, that doesn't get told about the union crafts. I mean, every time I've ever taken a facilities person, a white collar worker, college educated, to one of the apprenticeship programs, they're blown away. They have no idea that for 100+ years, we've been training craftspeople in a well-rounded craftsmanship for forever, and that message does not get out. And it's one of the things that you're doing a great job of with the Georgia Construction Careers, is to teach these high school kids, man, you can have a killer career, not just a job, because a career is something that you can advance in. A job is something you do. A career is something you advance in, and there are all kinds of advancement.
Yeah, and I always tell people, they ask me where I went to school. I went to SMU, Sheet Metal University, and it really is. We're the other 4-year degree. Yeah. So everybody thinks I'm talking about the college, but we are college. We're just phrased differently. And so I said in another segment that Commissioner Echols, we've always been said we're the best kept secret, and I say we're the best told truth, and that's the message I'm going to continue to get out. And if you would, I'd like for you to elaborate a little bit on. Let's talk about the tale of two cities. Let's look at what happened in Vogtle and Washington. Is that Washington County? I believe it is.
It's Burke County.
Burke County, sorry. And Augusta. And tell the listeners what happened over at VC Sumter.
In 2017, Toshiba, who owned Westinghouse and owned the technology that we're building, essentially, they got into financial trouble. Obviously, early on in the plant, some of the non-union workforce had botched up a lot of welding issues. It put us behind in the plant. And as Georgia Power then converted the plant over to a union plant, and we tried to get back on track, Toshiba began to write down money. And I think, Randy, they had hoped there would be 20 of these reactors built, and then there were only 2 after the Fukushima accident. And obviously, if you're only building 2 instead of 20, well, you're not getting the scale that you had hoped, and the things aren't as cheap. It's the difference between a custom-made car, and my Chevy Volt, being made at a GM plant. So, so over at the Summer plant, the South Carolina regulators decided, after the Westinghouse bankruptcy, that they were going to throw in the towel, that they weren't going to continue the plant. They would just leave it rusting until Jesus comes. And here in Georgia, we felt like, wait a second, we're already $5 billion into this project. What good is starting something that you don't finish? Right? It has zero value, and it serves as a monument to failure. And we did not want to fail because, one, we felt like, all the men and women that were working out there, part of the dignity of being a craftsperson is finishing the job and being able to take your grandchild by there and say, Dad worked on this plant. There's a lot of joy that comes from that, I'm sure. And so our commissioner said, you know what, we're going to move forward. And we're going to finish this plant. And so I had a motion in December of 2017 to continue this plant. It was a go-forward motion. And even in retrospect, even with the difficulties that we've continued to have, I believe it was the right decision. Because, you know what, Rut, I go back to the Bible where it says, where there is no oxen, the stable is clean, but much work is accomplished by the work of an ox. When you are building something this complicated, this is not one project, this is hundreds of projects on a site, you are going to have a little bit of manure when you have oxus, and you're going to have to clean it up. And we've had a little bit of difficulty. We're going to persist. We're going to finish this. It is going to be monumental, and Georgia is going to stand and look at our nation and say, look, we did what you couldn't do.
Well, look at the communities, though, Rut. I mean, over there where VC was, that's a devastated community. I mean, businesses shut down, storefronts are closed, people are without jobs, are traveling out of the community to get work now.
It was a ripple effect.
Absolutely. Now let's look at Vogtle. Businesses are opening, businesses are thriving, hotels, homes, everything is thriving in that county. I mean, it's transformed an already big city into a larger thing. And that's not the first time this commissioner has stood up to do the right thing. I want to take you back a few years to Harley Branch, when he was the only vote to keep that plant open. And why was that important to you?
Well, it was important because I knew that even though it was a little more money to put those scrubbers on that plant, one, that plant was half of Putnam County school budget in Putnam County.
Wow.
And then the craft that would have come in and worked for years with all the ripple effects that you're talking about, from motels to food to fish and tackle on the weekend to everything else that a person that's living there buys and purchases, and everything that's required to keep them going. I mean, it would have had an enormous impact. And for whatever reason, the power company felt, this plant has seen this day, but it was a decision we could have made. It would have given 20 more years of life to that plant, not to mention all the workers that were there full time. So I think it was a sad day when that happened, and I sure hope we don't make the same mistake up there at Plant Bowen.
So how do we keep it? It's interesting you talk about, because I work with 1579 IBEW out of Augusta, and they are constantly searching like a needle in a haystack for people who have the aptitude to be able to do the work at Plant Vogtle. How do we, and you talked about the institutional knowledge, how do we keep that institutional knowledge and grow that institutional knowledge among the people in the state of Georgia when that plant ultimately runs its course? Is that kind of what you're talking about with other projects? And
I think you take someone that had come on as an apprentice, and by the time they finish with the project, they're a journeyman. They've developed massive skills. They're now very, very good.
Yes.
The top 5% in the world, on welding, let's say. And now what are they going to do that the project is done? Where are they going to have to go that takes advantage of that kind of skill? We should have some place for them to go. I mean, certainly you look at, our car plants and other things, our tractor plants, different things like that. But what about something massive like building a Generation 4 reactor, or a rocket that might go to Mars? I don't know, but we need to be thinking about that. It's more than just the electricity. It's more than that.
Yeah. I want to say that you're talking about 4,000 or 5,000 workers that are, look, a construction worker's job is different than anybody else. Our job the first day on the job is to work ourselves out of a job. That is our goal. That's what we're doing. We know that, and we're happy about that. That's fine, because we know with our skill set, we're going to go to the next place, which leads me to this. If we don't have a project in Georgia, we're going to lose them to another place. And they don't always come back.
Especially those high-end guys, man, that, women
absolutely.
Too, I mean, that have that,
They're going to chase. Your son is welding out in the Rockies. Well, our folks are going to go to where the next project is and where the money's at. Yeah. And let's face it, wages in the South are a little bit suppressed compared to other parts of the country. So it's a little bit naive to think if we let them go somewhere for a year or two, they're going to come back. I got news for you. They're not going to walk away from money. They're there to make money. Yeah. So I'm hoping that, I know we had a project on the books, and we spent about $50 million down in Stewart County, and it's a little maybe too early to be saying let's build another one. But before we bring a Bowen offline, I would like to see another one coming online, not only for the workers but for the communities involved too. I think about, Rut, real quick, that up in Bowen, we've talked about, Commissioner Echols, the homes around there, $300,000-$400,000 homes. you shut down a plant like that, those homes are foreclosed. I mean, and that community, whether it's one reactor, whether it's one cooling tower or two units, it devastates a community. And it's going to happen eventually, but I'd like to see phase in, phase out.
And you know what? That's the commission's job, is to do 20-year planning. And we will go into that process next summer. And that's why it's important for everyone listening to the sound of my voice to reach out to commissioners, right? Commissioners are very accessible. You can call our office, you can email us, and just say that these plants are important to my family, to my union, to my extended family, to my children, and I want to continue to work in Georgia. I want to continue to provide, tax money, to bolster whether it's Bartow County, where that plant is from, or Stewart County, moving there. Commissioners need to hear those kind of testimonies. And, in the past, our workers at Vogtle have been very vocal and letting us know how important that plan is.
Thank you so much for spending time with us. I want to wrap it up by asking you a question about, and Randy and I were talking about this yesterday, about alternative energy, what that means. And I did a little research last night. I was very surprised where Georgia ranks in terms of alternative energy. What, in your estimation, what is the definition of alternative energy, and what's Georgia's role there in terms of finding other energy sources?
Yeah, so people, when they think of alternative energy, they think of something other than a traditional power plant. So they may think of renewable energy, things like solar, maybe geothermal, water coming out of the ground, or they may just use the word clean energy, which could incorporate nuclear energy, and in Europe means biomass too. I mean, there's about to be a biomass plant built in Georgia, 60 megawatts. 60 megawatts that's going to require, I hope, some of your craft labor.
Biomass meaning?
That's taking slash. That's the leftover tree limbs and tops and scrawny little trees in a timber harvest that can't go to the mill. It's usually just left there, piled up, and burned with diesel fuel. But with these plants, you can chip all of that up. With a chipping crew, you can haul it over to the plant, and that would take about 130 semi-truckloads a day to feed a 60 megawatt furnace. And so you've got to build that build that boiler and subsequent systems, and then you've got all of those jobs that are going to supply that slash or that chipped wood. Right, it's pine, it's southern pine that's being chipped. It would normally just go to waste, turn to methane, be burned. So you do have that on the horizon. We approved it about 3 years ago, and it's going to be built in the next 2 years.
And where's the location on that?
We haven't announced the location yet, so I'm not allowed to say, but it will be in South Georgia.
Okay, good. We talked about having diverse energy, and it's important. And there'll be some people that come along from different parties in the political process that are going to be advocates of shutting down a Bowen, maybe prematurely. And we're not on board with that as labor, not only from a jobs perspective, but from a look at Texas perspective.
That's right.
Can you just briefly talk about what happened out there and how we can avoid that in Georgia by having just an array of energy sources?
Yeah, so January 15th, 4.5 million people out of power out there. They're kind of an island unto themselves. They've got a deregulated system. There's really no incentive to do preventive maintenance.
Talking about Texas.
Texas, to winterize, because they have these independent power producers own the plants, and they bid in every day. And just because they spend money with IBEW, doing work on their plant to do preventive maintenance doesn't mean they're going to get to pass it along to the consumers. And so as a result, they don't do the work, and their plants failed when the temperatures dropped, to record lows.
Yeah.
So Georgia doesn't want to be in that position, and that is why it's important for us to spend the money with the workers having a state-of-the-art plant. Any plant we have needs to be state-of-the-art. We don't need to have jalopy plants hanging on. We need to make sure that we have plants that will provide reliability. Randy, Rut, businesses coming to our state want reliable, energy is so important.
How important is it? You are a Chevy Volt driver. I think, it's a fait accompli that we're moving to this electric vehicle environment. I'm looking at, my truck is 7 years old, 8 years old. I'm looking at the next, couple of years buying another vehicle, and I'm thinking, might as well go electric. What is the state doing in terms of like bolstering that infrastructure necessary to move to that kind of electric vehicle environment?
Yeah, to me, they're not doing enough. I mean, for 11 years, I've been driving alternative fuel vehicles. I'm on my 6th electric. Wow. Right. I also have a natural gas F-150 four-wheel drive. Yeah. I've had a Honda Civic that is a natural gas. I used E85 in my Impalas that the state had. So I am Mr. Alternative Fuel because I believe that we need to be using a diverse mix of fuel. This diverse mix of fuel, whether it's at our plants or in our automobiles, it gives us more independence. And we have some manufacturers, particularly GM and Ford, that are stepping up. And they're going to be producing cars like the F-150 Lightning. You saw the Cadillac commercials on the Super Bowl last year. So I think it's just a matter of Republicans, my colleagues, throughout the state, realizing, okay, this works for my life, right? And that's why trucks, Rut, are so important, because so many of craft drive trucks, and so many South Georgia Republicans drive trucks. So we need a truck that works for them. And take the F-150 Lightning, true four-wheel drive. It outruns a Corvette, and you can plug your house into it. I mean, it doesn't get it much better than that.
So the council here has approved the purchase of a Rivian.
Yes, and I was just about to say Rivian.
Oh, was it? Yeah. So Rivian is a new manufacturer. And matter of fact, there was an article not long ago about possibly building a plant in Georgia, which is something Kenny Mullins of the IBEW and myself have been pushing and looking into. And, when you talk about a truck that pulls more than an F-150, has 750 horsepower, that's a pretty darn good vehicle, and has a 440-mile range.
Yeah, that Rivian, I hosted the Rivian at the Capitol. I had it there this year for legislators to see it. They were impressed. Most of them had not seen that. And we have some sites in Georgia that would be perfect. I mean, if we landed a Rivian factory in Georgia, that would be golden.
It'd be great, and and we're going to bring the energy, the power online to do it.
I looked this up because I thought I read something about this, but yesterday I read an article, and 2 days ago it says Rivian is the most. This is a Motor Trend. The title is Rivian is the most remarkable pickup we've ever driven.
Yeah, wow. And I'll tell you, Ford,
it's pretty high praise.
So Ford gave them $500 million, and Google gave them $800 million. And I believe, if I'm not mistaken, some of the Rivian technology is going to be in that Ford Lightning truck. That's the partnership of $500 million. But we're excited about it. I mean, the building trades, owns 2 electric chargers in this parking lot of this building.
I'm plugged into one right now.
Well, there you go. Free of charge, by the way. That's a service a building trades puts out. I mean, we're okay with it, Rut. Mm-hmm. We just want to be a part of it. We want to help build those solar plants. We want to help build the biomass. Our workers have proven they have the knowledge, the skill to do it and do it the right way. And we can be more cost effective because the non-union botched it up. That's not cost effective.
And we have the means to recruit and train those people.
100%. And I know we're looking to close out. I just want to say this to Commissioner Echols, and I hope everybody listens in. And thank you on behalf of ratepayers of Georgia. I know you're there looking after our best interest. I'm a ratepayer. It's important to me. I know you're also looking at the diversity of energy. That's good. I also appreciate your willingness to look at the labor issues and see that our folks are the most skilled and the most qualified to do those jobs, and that's important. You've been on record saying that. But beyond that, you also look at the communities and how they're affected, and I respect the way you handled Plant Branch. We lost it, but you tried to save a school system. You tried to save the community. That shouldn't be overlooked. And my message to anybody, Rut, is, we have a lot of politicians that just talk. Commissioner Echols does what he says he's going to do. And that's, he looks after our interests, but he also looks at the broader picture of the entire energy and public sector. So I thank you for that. Continue the good work.
Thank you.
And I know you're very busy man, and I appreciate you taking time to spend time with us and educate us on what's the future of energy in Georgia.
Yeah, follow me at Twitter at Tim Echols, on Facebook, Instagram. I'm at all of those places, or go to timechols.com.
And my guess is you might be in Sanford Stadium a few Saturdays in the fall.
Yeah, in red and black, definitely.
I'll see you there.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thanks.